BAFTA award-winning writer, poet and storyteller whose work sits at the intersection of identity, activism and imagination.
And being a mixed race person, you kind of want to honour your heritage, but also you just want to be from where you're at. Don't ever think I'm speaking for all gay people, all mixed race people, black people, all men. You can't do that. There's a lot of people that I'm in community with, but they have their own voices. For me, once I was just I accept myself unconditionally, then I could exist authentically with other people and they could accept me, because people can't accept you if you're not actually showing up as your true self.
Exactly.
I am building a legacy and it is bigger than me, and I love that. I love that my work kind of is doing things that are really special.
Hi Black Circle family, and welcome back to another episode, and as ever I'm your host Zoe, and today's guest is a BAFTA award-winning writer, poet and storyteller whose work sits at the intersection of identity, activism and imagination. From spoken words to novels and film, Dean Atta has built a body of work that challenges how we see race, masculinity and queerness. Most recently, he co-wrote the BAFTA-winning short Two Black Boys in Paradise and is preparing to release his debut adult novel, Big Man, alongside his picture books, Aunties, Bangles. Dean, welcome to the Black Circle.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And, like I said, your work is really kind of laid with identity and heritage. And you are from dual heritage. So You're Greek and you are Greek Cypriot and Jamaican.
Yes.
So what I wanted to know and what I find interesting is how that dual identity showed up for you growing up.
Well, can I just say firstly, my sister's name is Zoe.
Oh, no way.
So in Greek, Zoe means life.
Yeah.
So it was really informed by Greek Cypriot and Jamaican heritage, whether it's the language, the food, the culture, the music of both countries. And so that shows up in a lot of my writing. But growing up, it was more of a struggle because I hadn't been to Cyprus. I hadn't been to Jamaica when I was a kid. I first went to Cyprus when I was 15, basically because we couldn't afford to get on a plane. We couldn't afford holidays. And I first went to Jamaica in my 20s, and that was because my uncle paid for that. He wanted a big family trip for my granny's 70th. So it was really special. It was kind of having never been when I was younger to either country. It was that question of when people ask where you're from, and being a mixed race person, you kind of want to honour your heritage, but also you just want to be from where you're at. Yeah. So I'd be I'm from Wembley. Yeah. So that's where I grew up. And my parents were also born in the UK, in London, in Harlesden, and they actually met at high school. So, they would say they're also from London, also from Northwest London. And so, it was tricky, but as I kind of got more comfortable, and definitely after I had visited both countries, I felt like I really wanted to claim the heritage in a more kind of wholesome way or fulsome way, and be I'm Greek Cypriot and Jamaican and British, and I think that was my kind of coming to terms with how I wanted to identify, not how people, would identify me. But it was a long process, and that's just a kind of a short version of it.
Yeah, no, and again, why can't we be all three things? They can exist side by side, absolutely.
Well, I don't know about you. When I was at school, I heard that poem by John Agard, Half Caste. The word. Did it give you chills? Yeah, and that kind of what do you mean? Am I standing on one leg? Am I half this, half that? And that still was used when I was younger. I was born in 1984. So when I was young, we were still throwing that word around. But once that stopped and I settled on mixed race, that felt a bit better. But actually, by the time I got to uni, and I was really involved with the African Caribbean Society and stuff, I just called myself Black. And not everyone was happy with that.
Okay. Why are they not happy with that?
Because they're but you're not. Your mum's white. And,
right.
So the kind of political blackness piece didn't always kind of sit well with everyone I was at uni with, but I was president of the ACS, so then most people accepted me in that regard, but it was still, you know, it was almost like, are you denying your white side? And but it depends what day you ask my mum whether she calls herself white. You know, she'll, you know, she is, but she's also like, you know, I'm Cypriot, and that's something separate to being English, you know, and that was really interesting as well. So yeah, it is a minefield. I was about to start asking you, but you probably don't like people asking you questions.
No, I don't mind. So where I was like, oh, because my mum is mixed race.
Yeah.
And you could not call my mum half caste because she grew up with that as well. And it's like, you know, and now I hear the term like mixed heritage as well. So that's another evolution of the word. So I'm, that's what you would call quarter. So my mom's mixed race, English and Ghanaian, and my dad's Caribbean, St. Lucian. But I always go, are you from Trinidad? Are you from Sri Lanka? Are you from East Africa? And I'm like, no.
Oh, so people play the guessing game with you.
Massively.
See, people don't do that with me. They just ask, like, but how do you find that guessing game? Are people trying to connect? Is that what's going on?
I think they're just trying to figure me out because I think because like my hair texture is a little bit different and my skin color, and so it's just like, where are you from? Like, how do we place you? And like you said, I shouldn't really have to be placed, you know. No. So it's an interesting conversation. I think most of us have evolved now to realize that you know, like we can. When you were saying about people not accepting you, you're going to be perceived as a black man.
Yeah,
you are. Yeah. Your skin color is going to be like othered regardless. If you've got half white and you're not, like they're going to perceive you in that way. Yes. So yes, it's all a bit yeah. So, you know, how did you understand yourself in those early days? And did you feel like you had to navigate different versions of yourself in different spaces? I don't know, you touched on like the African society, and how did that show up for you? Yeah,
I mean, in the early days, it was about, I mean, a lot of my friends were black boys in school and black girls and mixed race girls, and like, but it was kind of, I veered more towards the black people. Like I did have like a white kind of best friend in secondary school, but we had nothing in common. Right. I think I just fancied him. Like, so there was that going on too, you know, and that was, you know, I wasn't out until I was 15. So I was trying to figure out like, who I was in lots of ways, you know. So it was the sexuality piece did kind of dominate like my mind. Like I was thinking, you know, can people tell? Do I want to tell people? Like, am I going to go to hell? You know, I went to Church of England schools for primary and secondary school. Yeah. So that idea of, you know, homosexuality being a sin was right there front and center. You know, and we went to church on Sundays as well. So, you know, you would hear things, you know, people would say it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. You know, so I was just really trying to figure it out. And I think growing up with my mum only and my little sister when she came along, lovely Zoe Atta, shout out Zoe, because she's an amazing artist. She does nails as well if you need someone. Okay, yes. But yeah, for the first 8 years it was just me and my mum before my sister came along, and my dad wasn't in the picture so much, but his family were. But I think not having your dad in the house and not having the black male role model that you want, like you kind of don't know what it means to be a black man other than what you might see in the media or the, you know, the times you get to see your uncles and your cousins, but it's not like round the clock, like he's not in the house. So you kind of really only get glimpses of it. And so for me, that element of not having a role model, a male role model, and especially a black one, like that was the kind of that really preoccupied my mind. I wrote poems about it. I wrote this poem called Fatherless Nation that, you know, was about wanting my dad to be in my life. And actually at 18 I did, you know, say, could we have some sort of relationship? And he was like, no.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, if you don't want to go too personal, let me know, but what were some of the did he give you a reason why he didn't want that relationship?
It was along the lines of, you know, my brother has kind of stepped in, you know, and he's been a role model to you, and, you know, I've moved on, or I'm trying to, and I don't think I'd be a good dad. And so I had to take him at his word. Maybe he wouldn't have been a good dad, but I didn't know that I didn't know until I was older what great role models I did have, because I was fixated on not having my dad, you know. So my uncles were great, like all of them, and my aunts, of course, were great too. And, you know, my mum was, you know, really good at making sure I had, you know, really great men in my life, you know, and then I sought out role models as I got older as well, and have been really blessed, especially in the LGBT community, with amazing men that have kind of really looked out for me, you know, so shout out Ajamu and Tofa, who have been like really, really incredible. And so I think I've had it but I didn't know, because I wanted one specific man. I wanted my dad.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So yeah. And so that was the tricky thing. And so other boys at school, you know, who had their dads around were like, no, you're lucky. My dad's a nightmare, or my dad's miserable, or my dad beats us, or you know, so people would. Yeah. And that's the thing. I wouldn't kind of sit alone with my misery. Like, I'd talk to my friends about how I felt, you know, and they'd share insights with me of their experience. And I'd also write about how I felt. And that was really, really wonderful, because then I have that document, you know, in my first collection. You know, I have poems from when I was a teenager as well as my 20s, because I was writing from young. And, you know, the poems... I just look back at them and I think, oh, bless you, Dean. You know, I really have great fondness for my younger self, because he went through it. But I came through it, you know, and I'm the result of kind of his struggles, you know, and I'm really grateful for that.
That's a beautiful way to frame it, honestly. And it must have been quite a cathartic experience as well for you at that time, to have this space through writing to express yourself and what was going on for you. And a lot of men don't have that. A lot of Black boys don't have that.
Well, what I did have before writing, I had performing. So my mum was really good at finding the money. I think my grandparents chipped in as well sometimes, for me to go to theatre school on Saturdays. So I went and did singing, dance, I did street dance, tap dance, jazz dance. I did drama classes, and singing classes. And I did musical theatre shows when I was younger. So I did Oliver in the West End when I was 10 years old. Okay. Actually met Michael Jackson doing that.
Wait, what? This in itself, because obviously Michael is a big thing right now.
Right? So it was an incredible experience. The year before I was in Oliver, because we lived in Wembley, Michael was coming to Wembley. We did not have the money. I told you we couldn't afford to go on holidays. We couldn't afford Michael Jackson tickets either. So I sat in my garden and listened to the whole concert, because you could actually hear it. So that was really, really special. And then the following year I was cast in Oliver, and he came to see the show. So he saw me perform. I didn't get to see him, but he saw me perform. Incredible. And then, we kind of, it's like meeting the Queen. You kind of have to kind of line up in a semicircle. And he came round and shook everyone's hand, the whole cast. It was so beautiful. And, you know, and he was talking about the places where he laughed, the places where he cried. It was just really incredible. I mean, by then, you know, his vitiligo. So he kind of, didn't look the way, you know, he used to look. And so that was really interesting as well. But he was just so sweet, so charming, so it was about us. He was blown away by our performance, and we were just in awe, of course. But also it just, as a little boy, it just kind of felt right. I was like, well, you know, I'm a performer. He's a performer. Here we are.
Alignment, of course.
And so we had this kind of group photo. He had the boy who played Oliver and the boy who played Artful Dodger kind of right next to him. And I was just to the side. So I'm actually in the photo. The official kind of Getty Images photo. And so that was really lovely to find myself. I mean, I had a print at home, but I didn't know it was on the internet until I was writing my memoir. And I was like, let me look to see if that picture is still out there. And it is. And it's so cool. And so it was a moment that I felt like, okay, I can do anything. You know, this is thanks to my mum giving me these opportunities and, you know, taking me to theatre school, taking me to auditions, taking me to the shows. But, you know, I'm right here. Michael Jackson has seen me perform. You know, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a performer. And I don't know what happened, because my confidence as a performer kind of waned in my teens. And I think it came down to the fact that I was hiding this part of myself, knowing I was gay, and life was a performance, you know, I was performing heterosexuality. I was performing being like the other boys. I used to do really weird things. I would look at the back of the newspaper to see the football scores and pretend I watched the match.
Right. That is really performance.
Yeah. So I would just like, and the thing is, when I eventually came out at 15, a lot of people said they knew. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't know that they knew. And I kind of had this kind of place within my school ecosystem of being a performer. So that kind of allowed me a little bit. Like, all the girls would love to hear me sing. You know, when I was in the school plays and stuff, that was cool because, you know, I'd done real performances and I'd been in the West End and I'd met Michael Jackson. So those kind of things, people like, wow, like, you're really doing this, and like, you know, well done for like your achievements, but also like, oh, you're gracing us with your presence, like, because, you know, I got days off school to do the shows and stuff like that. So I had this kind of like this aura, or this kind of like thing about me that I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of school. Like, you almost felt like there might be this big show that takes me out of school and I don't go to school anymore. I just have a tutor. Yes. Like, you know, I always thought that might happen. Right. And it didn't. It was kind of a short-lived kind of acting career, but it was really fun. And I think, you know, seeing even now some of the people that I did kind of shows with, like, being, you know, big names like Sheridan Smith and Jamie Bell, like, and it's really cool that you get to see those people out there doing those things. And I actually think I've landed in the right place. I love being a writer, but I didn't know that was in my path or kind of like the journey I was going to go on, because I did think, I was going to be a pop star or an actor or a musical theatre performer, and it kind of just didn't go that way.
Never say never. You never know what's coming up in front of you. You like never limit what's going on. And I know you're walking in your purpose now with writing and even your performance. When I watch some of your YouTube performances, there's performance in there as well.
That's it. As a poet, you do perform.
Yeah.
But that was also came about in a funny way, because I was writing my poetry and then going to open mics and reading them. But I'm dyslexic, and I didn't know I was dyslexic, but I was getting quite jumbled up. My hands were shaking, like I was saying the wrong words. And I just figured, well, I don't like, it's not the performing that's the thing, because I've already done musical theatre and I was like, you know, never really nervous doing that. So it's the reading. Right. So I need to memorize these poems and then I can perform them. So that's how I kind of got into spoken word, by like realizing, okay, if I treat this like a script I need to memorize, and then I can add the performance to it. And when I'm performing, I'm like super confident. Yeah. So spoken word really worked for me because it was allowing me to be, you know, my authentic self, but also add this layer of performance on top, which I knew people liked. You know, I would do things like, when they called my name for the open mic, I'd start reading the poem from my seat. So I'd get up and start saying the lines as I was walking to the stage. Nice. And like, because I could really project my voice anyway. And so I'd make all my performances dramatic. I'd sometimes have outfits like, and, you know, like play characters in the poems. And I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Like, spoken word was such a fun part of my career, because it allowed me to kind of play to lots of my strengths, the writing and the performance, and also like the bit of the chat before the poem as well, like kind of just having being able to set the stage and give context to your work is a really special thing that poetry kind of allows you to do. The way you introduce a piece can kind of completely change the way people see it, and also, you know, you can perform it differently on different days. Yeah. What's in print is in print, but my performance of my work can be, adapted to whatever audience and whatever mood I'm in as well.
You can bring the emotion out of it. I want to go back just a little bit, because you touched on something that you said you came out when you was 15. What made you feel safe to come out at that age? Or was it something that made you feel safe? Maybe there was a pressure, but what was it that...
I'd say I came out, like, I really got outed.
Right.
So I came out to one person, and it was a boy I had a crush on, a boy that was in my drama class that I kind of felt there was some reciprocal feelings there. And he was very sweet about it. He was actually, you know, quite flattered. But, you know, I didn't do it face to face, actually. I wrote a note. You know, will you be my boyfriend? Yes, no, maybe.
That's so innocent. I love it.
Yeah, so he wrote a little note on the back. And he essentially said he actually had a girlfriend at another school. I don't know if that was true. I think he was letting me down. But, you know, he said he was bi and he was, but he wasn't ready to be out about that. But also, you know, he was really flattered and, you know, it was kind of, he respected it. And, but he told someone, and she told someone, and they told someone else, and it kind of spread around the school until people were coming up and asking me, like, are you gay? Like, it would be, are you gay, or are you going out with so-and-so? Is he gay too? Like, and I'd say, no, I'm not going out with him. Yes, I am gay, and it's not my business to talk about, you know, his business, you know, so I wouldn't out him. But at the same time, yeah, everyone that asked me if I was gay, I just said yes. And that was interesting because it was, thrust upon me. But kind of once it was done, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Like, and there were a few boys that weren't nice, but not like in your face. They were just cowards. They'd like in the back of class, like they'd be like, gay. Just whisper it. Yeah. The teacher couldn't hear it. Yeah. And it would just kind of like drip, 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 like really upset me. And that's what forced me actually to come out to my mum. So I was home one evening after dinner, washing the dishes, crying into the sink. Oh, and my mum's like, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And I was like, oh, there's these boys at school. They keep saying I'm gay. And my mum was like, well, if you know it's not true, it's okay. And I was like, but it is, Mummy, it is. And I collapsed on the floor crying. And she got down and she was stroking my back. But unfortunately, like, I think if she'd just left it there and said, you know, it's okay, I love you, like, but she then was like, well, you got to be careful, you know, you got to use condoms, there's HIV. And that was like straight away. And it was like, that became a preoccupation for her, like, you know, when she believed I was sexually active, like before I actually was. But she was like, do you need condoms? Have you got condoms? And I was just like, oh, this is giving me the ick.
Yeah, we don't ever talk about that with our parents, do we? No, yeah.
But, you know, it is, you know, it was a big deal. You know, if we think back to the 80s and the HIV AIDS crisis, and, you know, there was these terrible commercials on the TV of tombstones, and like, it was just it was a horrible thing, and it did affect so many people, and it still does. So I understood my mum's concern, but just like telling me off the bat, like as soon as I come out, you know, you've got to be careful about HIV, it was just it did upset me. But, you know, we moved on. And, you know, she was very supportive. And, you know, when I did start having boyfriends and I was still living at home, you know, they could come round to stay. And I was like, cool. Like, and she was she's very, very accepting, very open-minded, very kind of supportive in all areas, you know, including, you know, me wanting to pursue the arts. Because, you know, some parents are just like, how are you going to make money? Like, my mum in all things was, do what makes you happy. Yeah. You know, if you're not hurting anyone, do what makes you happy. And that applied to my personal life and my kind of career as I figured out what that would be.
And that's so beautiful, because I've had so many people come to this podcast and like, my parents wanted me to be an engineer or a doctor, or, you know, and I had to really fight against their parents' wishes. So I'm glad that you got the space to just go out and explore and just be, which is beautiful. I want to move on a little bit and talk about activism, language and responsibility. So one of your earlier poems, I Am Nobody's Nigger, cut through culturally and politically. And we were having a little bit of a conversation about this off camera. So I want to give a bit of context, because I want to read out some of the lines that really landed with me. And we talk about the N-word and whether people are using it as empowerment or we're reclaiming the word. And, you know, there's people like you and I, and we're like, no. No, we're just not doing that. So I was umming and ahhing about using the N-word in this piece when I'm writing this piece, but I'm going to. So yeah, just anybody who doesn't like hearing it, just brace yourself. So I'm going to read 3 lines that I just found really poignant. So the first one: rappers, when you use the word nigger, that's one of the last words Stephen Lawrence heard. So don't tell me it's a reclaimed word. Next one: I am nobody's nigger now, so you can tell Kanye and Jigga, I'm not a nigger in Paris, I'm not a nigger in London, I'm not a nigger in New York, and I'm not a nigger in Kingston. And it goes on for crying, but I just cut it there. And then the last one: call me nigger because you're scared of what brother means. And I was just like, that last line, call me nigger because you know you're scared of what brother means. It's just like, so tell me, like, what was going on for you at the time when you compelled to write this?
So 2 of Stephen Lawrence's killers were finally kind of convicted of his murder. there had been, this, well, the Niggas in Paris song was really big at the time. And there was just kind of a lot going on. I'd watched this documentary about NWA. I had kind of watched, and we'd been talking a lot about kind of the slave trade and how, that we were paying back people who had to give up their enslaved people. This country was paying people.
Yes.
And that was just kind of wild. And also hearing about Lloyd's of London, how they insured the slave ships or the cargo, the people who were cargo, so that people thrown overboard, they'd still get a payout for throwing people overboard, be like, oh, we lost some cargo to sea, and so just it was a kind of culmination of that. But I'd also had people call me the N-word in a friendly way, but one of them in particular that stuck with me was an Asian friend at school.
Oh no.
Who well, not school, university, who was really into hip hop, so thought it gave him a pass, and he was hollered it over campus at uni. What's up, my N-word? And I had to go over to him, and actually I was so furious because he'd shouted it, and it was ton of white people around. It was the library square of uni, and I was shaking, but I just decided, I hugged him and I whispered in his ear, I was like, don't ever call me that again.
Good.
And he tried to start making excuses. I was like, stop, just walk away. And we never spoke about it again, but he never called me that, and hopefully never called anyone else that again. But it was just, for me, I don't want to be called it. And for me, writing the poem was the easy part, because the poem felt like it had been percolating. We'd grown up with the kind of injustice of Stephen Lawrence, being killed, and his killers for so long not being brought to justice, and we'd seen his family suffer, and trying to get justice for him and fight to try and get justice for him, and I'd heard about how they chose to bury him in Jamaica because they didn't want Britain to have him, and I thought,
or
wow,
something happened to his graveyard, or was that correct? I'm not sure if that.
I'm not sure. I think they chose to bury him in Jamaica,
okay.
but we can check that. But when I wrote the poem, it was kind of just kind of a synthesis of various kind of threads that I'd been thinking about, because I am a fan of hip hop, and it was tricky. When I'd go out, I would feel uncomfortable, but similarly, I like dancehall music, and when I went out, I'd again have to stop when the homophobic songs come on, and my friends would look to me about whether they could keep dancing, which was quite annoying. But make your own decisions, right? And that was the thing. This was me saying what I am not. And yes, I'm referencing other people, but I didn't see it as a diktat. I didn't see it as you must not use this word. I'm just saying, remember, it was the last word you heard before a lynching. Remember, it was the last word Stephen Lawrence heard. So we can't just push that away and say, those things aren't true. So we, I think if you can, with your chest, you take on all of history and all that word means, and you still want to go use it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I agree.
But, we saw how that word caused a furore at the BAFTAs.
Yes.
And that was another situation where, so for me, that situation was really a difficult one to see Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan in, because I don't know how much they knew about the context of this man with Tourette's. I don't know how much they understood, in the moment what had been said. And I think there was a duty of care. And it shows, duty of care that wasn't kind of fulfilled to David Johnson and to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. So it was really, everyone got let down there.
Absolutely.
And being in the room as a Black person, not even being on the stage, I was stunned. And I was bracing myself for when I went up. I knew I was going up.
Yes.
Felt very confident about that. But I was bracing myself for okay, if I'm on the stage and that word gets said, what how will I react?
Right.
And it didn't happen to me. So I don't want to kind of like claim that, but I know what it feels like to be called that word in front of white people. Like, and it was, it's humiliating.
But even having that fear in the back of your mind on a day that's so momentous for you, it's so unfair to kind of have that shadow. And again, it's the lack of safeguarding from the BBC and those institutions. And there was obviously this debate about whether the BBC did this on purpose, and that they'll never cop up to it, even if they did. But it was just this very
I get the impression it's like this was going to be a teachable moment, but we can't do that at the expense of our humanity, our dignity. We can't pit people, their kind of human rights and their kind of like humanity against one another. Like, and I think it was really really appalling and really heartbreaking to kind of see again the riff and the fallout that it caused, and the kind of the weeks of kind of conversation. And obviously we're still talking about it now. So it was hard to talk about. And even though I'd written a poem and I had really clear views on the word, I had never considered the word in the context of Tourette's.
Right.
I've never considered the word in the context of someone that doesn't mean it saying it to you. And in a way, I'd thought about, Black people saying it in a friendly way. I thought about, non-Black people trying to say it in a friendly way. I thought about racists saying it. I hadn't thought about someone that isn't racist but says it because they have this condition that makes them say the worst possible thing at the worst possible time. That had never come into my mind. So when I gave a couple of interviews the kind of days following the BAFTAs, I kind of was just a bit stunned, shell-shocked, and like dealing with a mix of emotions with my excitement for having won a BAFTA, but also trying to hold the weight of this situation because it felt weighty. I didn't really know how big it was snowballing into, with everyone in the States joining in, because it was two beloved Hollywood actors, so I understood why people wanted to join in, but I think and had it not been televised, I don't think would have had this much of a kind of a kind of outcry about it. It still would have been terrible, for Delroy and Michael, but I also think it could have been managed. But I think that you have a delay, that you can cut things like people saying Free Palestine,
exactly.
But you couldn't catch the N-word,
Exactly.
not good enough.
But it's interesting again because now it's hit an American audience and the Black African American audience, and then there's another layer to the discussion about us as Black British people, how we're responding to that. Us under the telescope, and then it kind of feels unfair because it's like we are so exposed to Black American culture in a way that they are not with us, and it's they and I'm not trying to cause any discourse, I'm really not, but it feels like they don't think we have any of our own culture, and that we're not being activists in our own right, or we're not leading rebellion in our own right, and it's just wrong. So that whole situation got me a little bit mad because I was like, with so much things that we've done activist-wise over here, you just don't know about it.
Yes.
So that kind of divide, that was another kind of ripple in the ocean, So that was disappointing to see come from there. So your work often sits in that space between art and activism. How do you navigate that balance without feeling like you're carrying the weight of representation?
I think it's by remembering I'm only speaking for me, occasionally for my family. I wrote a memoir about my own life, my own upbringing, and 20s and 30s, and I knew I had to be careful because I'm talking about my mum, my sister, my extended family, and that is a kind of a pressure there. But I don't ever think I'm speaking for all gay people, all mixed race people, Black people, all men. You can't do that. I'm from the people I'm from, and there's a lot of people that I'm in community with, but they have their own voices, like so many amazing authors out there that are kind of putting work out there that, and in other art forms, in film, in theatre, in music. Music is a really great tool for getting political messages out there, although you can be quite easily compromised, but I think we all can, and I think publishing is a capitalist, enterprise. It's a tricky thing. I sit here with my books and I feel super proud. But, I don't make the most money off my books. My publishers make the most money off my books. What my books are for me is a way of putting important messages, stories, underrepresented stories out there. And because when I was growing up, we didn't have LGBT books in school. When I was in school from 1988 to 2003, there was a law called Section 28, which meant teachers couldn't say it was okay to be gay. You couldn't have LGBT books in school. You couldn't teach about it. It was called like pretended family, like a gay family wasn't a real family. And that was, the Tory government, Margaret Thatcher's government at the time, that did that. But we have kind of similar things going on in the States with the book bans.
Yep.
Even here in Manchester, there was one school where my book was taken out of the school library.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, and the librarian lost their job because she was trying to fight against that happening. And so, there are, still censorship going on for LGBT stories, Black stories that kind of are critical regarding race, critical race theory, and it's so we can't rest on our laurels. Like, just because I can get published doesn't mean my books can't be pulled off the shelves.
Yeah.
So I don't take any of this for granted. I'm really grateful to be published, like, not in a like, oh, I'm unworthy, but like, it's kind of like there's an easier business model to not include Black writers and LGBT writers, but I'm lucky, like my next book, Big Man, is with a queer publisher, and I really love that because they just implicitly get what I'm talking about. Like, there were things I thought were risque, and they were like, we published much more risque things than your book, and I was like, great. So that felt really good. Whereas with my other books, sometimes I'm having to justify why I want to put this in, why this is important, or even like explain like what it means, provide a glossary, and that doesn't always go in the books, but sometimes I try and weave it in the context. So kind of I do write with a kind of a wide audience in mind. Like when I do my first draft, perhaps I'm thinking about, I've got a wonderful writer friend called Keith Jarrett, who's a poet and novelist, academic that, I studied alongside. We did an MA together. And he is kind of someone I keep in mind when I'm writing my first drafts, because I'm like, okay, as long as Keith would get it, like, someone that gets me, he's Black, he's gay, he's of Jamaican heritage as well, he's similar age, lives in London, like that's kind of first of all who I'm talking about, like when I sit down to write. But then when I'm editing my books, I think about, okay, but like, would my mum get this? Would like some of my other, white family members, would my white friends get this? Would my white boyfriend, actually he gets it. Like, but, still, I do kind of think beyond just talking to, people that have experienced what I'm writing about. I do think about how this could be used to educate or to build empathy and understanding, and kind of, be, if my book's the first Black queer story, like you're going to pick up, like I want it to be enjoyable. I want it to maybe point you towards other books. I reference other books within my books, so like, in Big Man, I'll be referencing James Baldwin. In Black Flamingo, I'll be referencing like Travis Alabanza, and like I try and like shout out people that I think, okay, if you like me, go read them. Like, because I just think, we are many voices as Black queer people, so I don't feel alone, and so I don't feel wholly responsible for representing us.
You're paying it forward as well. And also from what you're saying, it sounds like you don't want to exist in an echo chamber, which I think it can be really dangerous to do, even with the podcast. Like, yes, I am reaching out to a certain demographic, but at the same time, like if somebody comes across this and they learn something, like that's a bonus for me.
Well, do you imagine your audience is Black people?
Predominantly, for sure. But if it were to reach, I want the stories to be not your stereotypical stories. Like I said, we have BAFTA winners, we have artists and people in tech, and it's just such a wide range of brilliance.
We still got the story of Justin Fashion, who I kind of talk about in Black Flamingo, and how difficult it was for him to be outed as a Black gay footballer, and how the effect that had on him, and taking his own life. And I think just kind of telling our stories, in all the art forms and all the mediums, whether it is also sport, whether it is fashion, whether it is music. I think, you know, we exist in all walks of life, you know, and I think, yeah, it is good to see us in all these spaces, even spaces that you kind of like, oh, what are you doing over there?
It's the intersectionality of
Yeah,
exactly. Hi, Black Circle family. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. It would really mean the world to me if you could take 2 seconds just to like, follow, subscribe and share, and really help me to build this community and keep the conversation going. Thank you. So reframing Black masculinity and queerness. So something that really stood out to me, especially watching Two Black Boys in Paradise, it's the tenderness of how you portray Black boys and men, and that vulnerability. And it was just this, like, I don't know, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but how I just interpret it, like when they're at the opening scene and they're on this boat and there's like the apple and this innocence, and then you switch to kind of like the street scene with the police, and it's but the apple, that Adam and Eve kind of referencing of innocence and loss of innocence. I don't know if I read that right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, because, you know, I was brought up Christian in the Church of England, and I heard that phrase, you know, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So the boys in Two Black Boys in Paradise are Dula and Eden. Their kind of paradise is their Garden of Eden, but it doesn't look like, well, it's just, we imagined it as the Scottish Highlands, because I'd spent a lot of time in Scotland, and I decided that was a special place for me. So you've got these kind of snow-capped mountains and a lake for the English. They call them locks in Scotland. And you know, like Loch Ness. Like,
I was today years old.
Yes.
I didn't realise that. Every day is school day.
So yeah, and the boys on the boat there, because I mean, for me, do you remember seeing Moonlight and the swimming lesson in the film Moonlight?
I feel so bad.
You're not seeing it?
I'm gonna
well, anyway, like,
but yeah.
For me, water was always a tricky thing, like, and I wasn't a confident swimmer, and I think it's a common story for Black people. And and so it was with my partner and like doing a lot of kind of swimming when I was in Scotland that I kind of learned to trust the water and to float and to swim and to feel at ease. Like I could trust my body, that I could finally relax. I felt like I'd spent so long holding on to tension. And so Paradise is a place where they can relax with one another, where they can just be free, where they're naked, where they are intimate, and, you know, in a sexual way, but also in a non-sexual way, just being, just kind of like lying next to each other, just kind of holding hands. And that is interrupted when they are dragged out of Paradise to the market stall. And the market stall represents a place of commerce, but also a place of like, they're suspected of being thieves. So they're accused of stealing an apple, and the market stall holder becomes a judge, and he's kind of banging down a gavel and kind of accusing them. The police show up, and then they are stopped and searched. And, you know, I've had that experience. Many Black men, many people have had that experience, but I think it really resonates with Black men when they see it, regardless of sexuality as well. Like, it's where we hook in the straight Black men. They're like, you know, I wasn't sure about this film, and then like when I saw the stop and search, it connected to me deeply. Like a lot of men would be like, it connected to me deeply, like, and I'd never seen it in this way, like, because the stop and search is really it's especially when people just watch it happening to you. It's a violation. And so their bodies, they're not in control of their bodies. They're being searched. They're being kind of also separated from one another. So the storytelling in this film is brilliant, because so much is said in the visual. Like, the poem is there. The poem was the kind of beginning, but we as a team, Baz Sells, Ben Jackson, our director and producer, kind of came up with a story that goes on top of the poem, what you can see happening to the boys. And they, well, when the police don't find anything on them, they are like, we're done here. And they march off and like reunite and kiss and return to paradise. And so it is a really like simple story, but intentionally so, because, you know, in the development of that story, we had so many ideas to do with, you know, different types of Black masculinity. There was a conversation about, could we have them playing football with the apple? Could we have them like replicate the Black Power salute that happened at the Olympics that one time? Like, I'm thinking about so much iconic imagery and so many important moments in a Black man's life, but we also had to be economical and have the maximum impact with, you know, the fewest kind of standout moments, because we kind of wanted to take you on a journey and not overwhelm you as well. So it was really great putting together you know, our script and storyboard and animatic, and the way we worked as a team was so beautifully collaborative. And I just felt so over 100 people worked on the film. So you know, that's kind of artists doing the kind of concept art, the storyboards, people making the puppets and the sets and the props, and people filming it, lighting it, editing it, you know, making the music, Jordan Stevens doing the voiceover. Like it took a village. And it's been a really wonderful journey to go on, and to be part of, you know, going from poem to film, and you know, that film screening in over 70 festivals, winning over, you know, 30 awards, we think now, and including a BAFTA. So it's been it's been a journey. 5 years to make the film, and then like a year of festival touring with it, and the conversations we've had with people that have kind of felt seen by the film, who have learned something, you know, or gained some insight, empathy from the film. It's exactly what, you know, we would have hoped for and more.
It's a real labour of love, and visually it's beautiful as well. And everybody, you can watch it on Channel 4. It's 9 minutes long, and it's beautiful. So yes, available to watch now. So I implore people to do go and watch that. So was the portrayal of tenderness a conscious challenge to dominate narratives around Black masculinity?
Or the contrast between that violation of the police stop and then the beautiful sex scene that happens when they return to paradise. Kind of like, think about that adrenaline of like being in a situation, then you get to be, you know, just together again, and like it was kind of this being safe, but also kind of like realizing how good they have it, and like what a beautiful space they have between the two of them. And it's for you as a viewer to decide whether paradise is a real space or an imagined space that they get to go in when they're just together, the two of them. Because at the end of the poem it says, you know, maybe it will be you in paradise with that person you have in mind right now. Because I want everyone to imagine they can be safe and accepted and find, you know, that space where they feel those things. Because so long, you know, I strived for that, and it took a long time to realize a lot of that comes from within. Like, it is about surrounding yourself with the right people, but also it's about kind of unlearning the kind of the messaging that you get from society that tells you not good enough, not manly enough, not Black enough, like, you know, too camp, too this, too that. Like, and for me, once I was just like, you know, I accept myself unconditionally, you know, then I could exist authentically with other people, and they could accept me, because people can't accept you if you're not actually showing up as your true self. Like, so yeah, Dealer and Eden, their tenderness for me was really important. We almost didn't have the sex scene as it is in the film because we were a bit nervous. You know, I'd written a lot of young adult novels, so we were kind of unsure whether my audience or the audience for this film was going to be teenagers or adults. And so if we hadn't included the sex scene, it probably wouldn't have got the 15 rating, and it could have been more suitable for younger audiences. But because our exec producer at the BFI who funded it, so Aoife Hayes was our exec producer, who's also Black and queer and amazing, and she was like, you know, you don't have to make a kids animation can be for adults too. So do what you want, what you really, really want to do. What's the film you'll be most proud of? And we did think, okay, if we could pull it off and it can look beautiful, we would like to show the sex. And so, you know, Ben, our producer, came up with lots of he had to pull lots of imagery of, like, you know, iconic kind of queer love scenes, and not porn, no, but artworks actually that kind of, so we could really enjoy the bodies together, and the kind of like the kind of composition of their bodies together. And it was just really, really lovely then seeing that come to life, and the great job our animators did in making that look real, and the way the boys kind of like talk to each other whilst they're having sex. Like you can see the connection, you can see the consent, you can see the love and the care, and it's just so beautiful. And so I've had, mothers of gay sons like say to me like, I never wanted to think about my son having sex, but seeing your film, I hope he has beautiful sex like that.
I love that. but it's so important. That's what I'm saying. Like you mentioned porn, and I think some people just get a very closed lens of what that type like homosexual can look like, and it's not. It's all the softness, everything that a heteronormative or heterosexual relationship it also exists in that space as well. So it's just like it's important that we see that representation. It comes back to the representation time and time again. Also interesting that you even had to stop and have that conversation with yourself. Is like, can I include this type of scene? If it was just like a straight person doing it, it wouldn't even be a thought. It would just be like, okay, is it like watershed? That's probably the only consideration, but not like that actually being portrayed. Does that make sense?
Exactly, because we were not making it for Channel 4. It's on Channel 4 now because it won Best of British. It was part of the selection for Best of British for the Iris Prize. And so all 15 of those films got to be on Channel 4. So that was like from our festival run, that was a kind of a reward that we got from being screened somewhere amazing. And but yeah, we weren't thinking about the broadcast element. We were just thinking about the cinema, being in festivals, and getting the rating was good, because to know now it's a 15 is kind of like makes it clear, because someone else made that call, and that means we don't have to decide who would we say this is okay for, because I in my young adult books, like I see them as being from 12 plus. But then there's people that say, I want to give this to my 10-year-old. I'm like, can you read it first? Because I may not be explicit, but I still allude to things.
Right.
And
children are smart. Children in this day and age.
I mean, children read Stephen King. Like some of the kids I work with, even in primary schools, they tell me they read Stephen King, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and that's like horror. That's really scary stuff. But I don't know. Like it is. I do think about doing things for age appropriately, and so that's become more clear to me as I've written for different ages. So I've got picture books now for 3 to 6 year olds. I've got my teenage books. I'm also writing something that's for that middle age group of like 8 to 12 year olds as well. And obviously I've got my work for adults, and I love having that because my aim is to have something for all the family. There's people I look up to like Michael Rosen, who writes for all age groups, and Benjamin Zephaniah, who's a mentor of mine, who wrote stuff for different age groups as well.
Zephaniah was a mentor.
Yeah.
Wow. Can we just have a little chat about that?
Of course we can.
How did he impact you in your writing?
So one, just his being a black man of Jamaican heritage with dreadlocks, who was so confident, so outgoing, so politically kind of outspoken, and just like so infectious. Like that when he performed, it was just like you leant in, you felt like so excited to hear him, and the way he used language, the way he used rhyme, the way he used humor, it was just the whole package really. I also knew he was dyslexic, which I am, and I was just really admired him. So when I was a teenager, approached him at a poetry reading and said, I write poetry too, will you look at my work? And I actually had some stuff on a CD, and I gave him like this kind of spoken word CD of mine, and then I don't know, I think the only contact details I'd left on it was my MySpace. So he wrote to me on MySpace, and
MySpace. Yeah.
But he was really encouraging, and then like gave me his kind of email and encouraged me to kind of keep in touch. And I sent him more of my poems, and I kept doing that. And he said to me, I think you've got enough for a book. And then when I wrote my poem, I'm Nobody's Nigger, and I was actually approached by publishers. He helped me navigate the publishing process, and looked at my book contract and made sure I wasn't getting ripped off. And he said my book deal was better than his first book deal, made sure I knew what I was getting into. Gave me a quote for the front of the book, would come to my shows, would kind of just be there whenever I had any kind of concern or kind of like just needed that I guess, a role model, like a mentor. And I remember writing to him when I was turning 30 and kind of saying, I don't think my life is where I wanted it to be.
Typical 30-year-old.
Yeah. And he was like, when I was 30,
Yeah.
I was in a police cell. Like, I'd been arrested, so you've got your freedom. Let's celebrate that, Dean. And I was just like, perspective. He always gave me really good perspective. He was one of the reasons I became vegan for a time. And I actually only stayed vegan for 2 years. But I don't think I told him when I stopped.
Well, you tried.
Yeah. He was so proud of me when I became vegan. I just wanted him to be proud of me. But I genuinely think he's someone that just accepted me off the bat. Yeah. Like, I just went up to him and he just took me in, like, and just like has kind of, was just so instrumental, and just having him as a touch point whenever I was like unsure, because he didn't want anything from me. He just wanted, he was just there whenever I reached out, he reached back. It was just and occasionally he'd just surprise me and turn up at one of my shows, and it would just be like, and everyone would be like, Benjamin Zephaniah's here, why is he here? And I'm like, is it for me?
I love it.
So it's it was terribly sad when he passed, and I'm still kind of coming to terms with that, like, and when people have been in your life in that kind of almost, I guess, that irregular way, there's people that are in your life on a daily, and then there's people that you could just check in, and I keep forgetting I can't.
Right.
Because I was used to there being gaps of time when we weren't in touch, and then I get back in touch and he's just like there and ready to receive me, and it's just I speak to his widow, and she's doing so much to kind of keep his legacy alive, and so many people are doing incredible things to celebrate him, putting on shows, building monuments, writing in his memory, and there's an anthology that's being worked on that he had initially initiated that's going to come out at some point, and I think his books will still be discovered, and and mean so much to generations to come as well. And I think having a legacy like that is such a special thing. Like, whether it's his poetry, his music, his essays, his kind of stance on things. Like, people always kind of refer to him whenever we talk about like OBEs, MBEs, all of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, see, 10 toes down.
Yeah. And I think standing in your truth is a really commendable thing, and I think he did that all the time, and owned his mistakes as well, quite a lot of them in his memoir. So I think being able to be that open, vulnerable, but also be that inspiration, that strength, that figure of kind of that people can look to for some guidance or words of wisdom, in a small way, it's what I'm trying to emulate. Like, I'm mentoring people, I try and support people, and be in community, and and I am building a legacy, and it is bigger than me, and I love that. I love that my work kind of is doing things that are really special. I did an event just yesterday, and one of the stipulations, it was an event for young people, and it was a poetry slam, and I was like a judge of it, and but I wanted every young person in the slam to have one of my books, so I just kind of asked the organizers, can we do that? And one of the young people that won one of the awards, she came up to me and said, I'm so grateful that you gave me this book, because my parents won't allow me to buy gay books.
Gosh, in this day and age, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, if that makes sense. And
so, like, that is really, really special to me. And when I do book signings, like, often a trans young person is telling me their chosen name, and I'm the first adult they're telling, and I'm writing their name, and they're being seen by me. And so things like that, I know it matters, like, and they tell me. And I'm really lucky now, because I'm starting to go back to schools year on year, and so I'm seeing some of these kids growing up, and like, I'm seeing them growing confidence, and they like give me updates on their writing. Like, their teachers are telling me, like, since the visit they've written loads more poems, and they're putting together this, and they're entering competitions, and they're going to do an anthology for the school, or this child's self-publishing their own poetry collection, and like, it's just so cool seeing that is having a real impact. And like, there's also like published authors who have, you know, told me directly that Black Flamingo inspired them to write their novel in verse, you know, and there's books out there now that, you know, if you look in the acknowledgements, it's like, thank you to Dean Atta for inspiring. And so I know I'm paying it forward. I know the work is having an impact. And it's great to be, you know, alive to get your flowers.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
I just don't take any of this for granted, and it just feels really, really, you know, I don't take life for granted. You know, so many of my, you know, people I love have died, you know, so I kind of every day is a blessing, every day is a gift, and you know, every day I can write or kind of like share my books or kind of just share space with people kind of doing similar work like I think you are doing. You know, you're putting stories out there, you're being really generous, you're creating a platform for other people's stories, which I think is a really, really special thing.
Thank you. And I was going to say, you know, everything that you've just encapsulated, that giving back, that paying it forward, that for me is legacy in action. You know, it's not kind of like what you leave behind and accolades, and it's like what you leave in people, you know, and how that ripple effect impacts people. All right, so BAFTA moment and creative evolution.
Okay.
Can we just... It's so by the way, I lifted it up and it's so heavy. But it's so beautiful. And, you know, like winning a BAFTA is not a small thing at all. So what did that moment represent for you personally and creatively?
It represented kind of, I guess, 2 decades of work as a creative. It represented 5 years of work on this film, you know, with the whole team. It represented something that I knew would change each and every one of their careers, and I knew would elevate mine. Like, it's been really interesting because I actually already knew a lot of people in film, but I just wasn't doing film.
Right.
Like, and so it's been really interesting that like these people that I've known, like kind of turning around, oh, Dean, we should talk. Like, because no, but I've come up with people, you know, we've been doing our similar things. You know, I've done a bit of theatre, I've done a lot of poetry and a lot of publishing. But you know, you rub shoulders with a lot of people along the way. And so it's really lovely now that, you know, I'm kind of stepping into their world and be like, hi, I've come to see what this is about. Right. And I'd say kind of similarly, like, you know, coming up in poetry, I was doing gigs with comedians, with musicians. So like, it's just really interesting, like how we all have come up together. Like, and I guess I'm thinking about the Black people. And maybe the gay people too. But you know, that's kind of been really lovely to see people be happy for me. Like, honestly, like it's not to be taken for granted, like, because, you know, in the Greek Cypriot culture, like, we believe in the evil eye, and actually don't feel like I'm getting any of that. I'm getting love. I'm getting respect. I'm getting just like people saying what's next, like real joy. And it's just I'm just really, like, it makes me really emotional thinking about it. Like, that whenever I see someone I haven't seen since winning the BAFTA, they're like, congratulations. And it's genuine joy and happiness for me. And I think it just shows that, you know, we can achieve, you know, like, because they see me as part of them. They see my success as their success because we've come up together, that we've, you know, struggled together, and we are seeing the fruits of our labor now. And I think that is what it's shown me. Like, I've got a strong community around me, people that, you know, have believed in me from day, you know, like, and that's really lovely that they saw this come in. Like, when it was a nomination, they were like, you've got this. You've got this.
There was no doubt.
And that was just so nice. Like, and I just think maybe that was manifestation. Maybe they did just genuinely believe I'd got that. Like, and it was only once I was sat down and that our category was announced that I did actually think, oh, I am going to have to go up and make that speech. Like, because I only wrote the speech in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Because, you know, I'd been really open to the director making the speech, because, you know, director's name goes front and center on films, but we'd really worked collaboratively. So it was really nice that he was, you know, quite open. He was like, if you want to do it, you do it. Like, because he didn't want to write a speech either. Like, he thought that might jinx it. So I was like, I need to write something. Like, you know, if we're gonna go up there, someone needs to have something written, because it's too big a moment to fluff up. Like, and so I wrote something, showed it to them, and they were like, well, you should read it. Like, you should definitely do it. And I was like, okay, I will. And then when our category was announced, I was like, it's us. We're going to get it. We're going to get it. And then I saw out of the corner of my eye, the camera was in the aisle next to us. And because I knew where the other two teams were for the other films, I was like, they don't have a camera next to them.
Yeah, of course.
So I kind of knew that kind of a few seconds before. So I was like, okay, it really is. And I said to my partner, shall I hug you or kiss you? And he's like, just hug me. Like, because I could have given him a big smacker.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I also had, the day before, I said, what if I proposed to you up there? And he's like, do not do that. But yeah, it kind of like, I just wanted the moment to go smooth. I wanted everyone to feel comfortable. Ben and Baz, who are our producer and director, and, our partners that were there. But also we had 25 of the team there with us as well. And so like, they were screaming when we won. It was amazing. And it was just such a special day and night and weekend, like, because it was kind of a whole thing, like, because there was the nominees party the day before. That's when I met Ryan Coogler.
Michael Jackson, Ryan Coogler,
right?
Zephaniah.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, that's the thing, like, we as a black man, I'm not short of role models, and I think we are really out here doing big things.
We are,
and I'm really grateful for that, like, to be part of that, but to have seen that, to have the way paved for me so incredibly, like, to know that, like, like, when I think about doing film, like, it is, because I can see myself there because of films like Moonlight, so because of Barry Jenkins and because of all the films Ryan Coogler's made, but it's like, it's also just, I don't know how to explain it. It's people want our stories, like, and it's just for us to make sure we tell them the way we want to tell them, so that we don't kind of get kind of co-opted into whether it's trauma porn or stereotyping. But I think you can really play with stereotypes. You can really lean into certain things and then go so far it becomes kind of surreal and absurd. Like, I love Spike Lee. Like, I love his films because they don't shy away from some of the big issues in the black community, but they also, like, do it on our own terms. And I think, like, that is really fun. And I'm really excited for whatever I do next in film, because I know it's just the beginning for me.
Oh yes. And no, I share the same perspective. It's just like that storytelling and the importance of ownership of our stories, IP wise, but also the narrative, being able to control the narrative. That's so important that we do that and we live in that lane. So did that experience shift how you think about your future creative direction?
Yes. I mean, it's opening doors for conversations. We will see where those conversations go. And I guess I don't mean just like, what do I mean? I mean, these kind of places you never imagined yourself going, conversations you never really thought you would have. But yeah, you kind of have to take everything with a pinch of salt. Like, and also I'm quite committed to my career as an author. Like, I'm really happy with the books I've got and the books I've got lined up to come out, and I really want to do that justice, because I love going on tour with my books. I love meeting my readers. I love going into schools and giving workshops and helping inspire young people to use their voice. So that is always going to remain really central to what I do. And so I'm not going to abandon all that to kind of write on spec, or like to kind of throw all my eggs in the basket of film and TV, because who knows where it's all going. I want to be part of it. I want to be part of it on my terms, though. So I'm already kind of seeing what it is I will and won't do, what type of people I do and don't want to work with. Like, I'm trusting my instincts, my gut feelings about people, but I'm also giving people grace and giving them a chance, and meeting with people and just seeing how we vibe. Like, I know that's vibe is such an overused word, but it means a lot.
It's applicable, right?
Because these projects take time. So you want to be on projects with people that you want to spend time with, you know? And so, yeah, I'm just figuring it out, like what stories, existing IP that I want to adapt, and then what original stories I think I really think are important to tell right now. And I have lots of ideas for stories. And so now when I have new ideas, I'm like, is this a book idea? Is this a film idea? Is this a TV idea? Like, and it's really interesting. Like, I guess in some ways it makes sense to do books first, because then I kind of am the creator, I own the IP. But at the same time, you know, writing something original for screen could be really fun. So like I'm working on a few things. But I'm not going to talk about that.
No, maybe you'll come back on podcast.
I'd love to come back.
So I want to talk about, we've got a lovely collection of books on the table, and I want to talk about Big Man and Aunties, Bangles, and that kind of emotional storytelling. So let's touch on Big Man first, which is due out in September. So if you'd like to give a bit of a synopsis about that.
So Big Man is about Big. You never get to know his name. He's called Big. He's a black gay man.
Hold it up, actually. Yeah, hold it up a little bit. Yeah.
So this is a proof and advanced copy of Big Man. So it says here coming out in September 2026. The real cover is yellow and black, or black and yellow, and you've got some chains on there, gold chains on there.
Nice.
But yeah, Big Man is the story of Big, black gay man going through a midlife crisis. He feels like he's a big man in a small life, and so he is kind of coming to terms with what he could have been, who he could have been. He's seen a lot of his friends come up and do big things, and he hasn't, or he hasn't done as big things as he thought he could have. And so it's kind of coming to terms with like what you want for your life, what you expected versus what you got. But he also has to kind of look back and face some of the difficulties he had in his younger life. And so kind of coming up in the club scene, which he did, you know, rubbing shoulders with some unsavory characters, experiencing an assault, and finding out he wasn't the only person that was assaulted by this one particular person, and kind of going through the process of like, is he gonna seek justice? Is he gonna be part of a movement? And you know, kind of thinking about, you know, men and sexual assault is something that has been talked about, but not like loads.
No.
And so I wanted to put that out there just as a kind of to say it happens to men too, and we want to, you know, and it can be really detrimental, and but we can't let it define us. You know, I've been sexually assaulted, so I wanted to talk about that in fiction. I did talk about it in my memoir, Person Unlimited, but I felt like I had to be really cautious in the memoir, whereas in fiction you can go wild. And so like,
just to not to interrupt, but why did you feel you need to be cautious in the memoir?
I thought about like legal implications. With a memoir, you have to have a legal read, and so, you know, you have to think about who could sue you, can you prove everything you're saying, you know, what impact does it have on how people are perceived, real people. Whereas here I kind of decided, you know, we're going to take people away from anyone real, and kind of like, but use characters that kind of will tell a story I think is really important to tell. So yeah, you've got Big and Little, who are a couple, black gay man, white gay man. So it's about interracial relationship. It's also about, they've got an age gap between them. Little's quite a bit younger than Big. And then there's Mother, who is a trans woman who helped kind of raise Big when he was younger. And she did great. She's a black trans woman from America that's moved to London. And she kind of took Big under her wing and kind of raised him in some regards within kind of the queer scene and as chosen family, shall we say. But in one regard, you know, she let him down because he was assaulted under Mother's roof. And so it's about him kind of trying to figure out, did Mother know, you know, did she allow this? Was she in any way kind of responsible for him being in harm's way? Trying to make peace with not getting all the answers as well, because we don't always get all of the answers or a clean resolution. But yeah, it explores club culture. It explores kind of corporate world as well. Like half of the book is kind of set here in like where the studio is in Canary Wharf, and so kind of Big's day job, he's an EDI consultant.
Oh yeah, and that's where he met Little. Was that?
Yeah, that's where he met Little. Yeah. So it's kind of an intersection of a lot of different worlds at play: corporate world, club world, you know, queer life, you know, and the kind of domestic life as well, like kind of these boys, big and little, have been together a long time, but they kind of have opened out their relationships, so it's also about that. But what I found with this book, it's really hard to sum up. And so I'm still kind of figuring out what it is I've done here. Like when other people read the book and have given us really lovely quotes, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what this is about. But they kind of find something that connects to them.
Yes.
Someone else reads it and finds something else that they connect to. And so I think it's a bit of a kaleidoscope, this book. And I think you'll see a bit of yourself, even if you're nothing like Big or Little, like you'll find something to connect with. And I think because I write, you know, from real life and real experience, and I kind of, I've lived quite a varied life. My characters are quite varied, and so when you read any of my books, you'll see someone you recognize in some capacity. But yeah, it's my first adult novel, so I'm really excited to kind of like move into this kind of adult literary space and have a work out there with all the grown-up books.
And that's exciting. So again, that's coming out in September. And on the other side of that, we have Aunties, Bangles. So if you'd like to share that one.
So this is my picture book, Aunties, Bangles. And this is illustrated by Aaliyah Marley, who also illustrated Confetti, my first picture book. And it's a story of love and loss. Auntie has died, and Theo is kind of remembering Auntie through doing some of the things that Auntie loved, so cooking and reading, and then dancing, wearing Auntie's bangles. And so Theo and Rama, his cousin, go through this journey of kind of facing their grief and also remembering Auntie with great fondness and joy. And and I think it's a really good way to talk to children about grief and to kind of find the words and the language, but also kind of figuring out that, you know, grief is love. You know, you grieve people because you love them, and I think love is something to celebrate.
They say that grief is the last act of love. Which I really resonate with. So I want to kind of wrap up with kind of like legacy, you know, your body of work and your legacy. When you look back at your body of work, what feels most important for you so far? Because there's so much more to come.
What feels important is saying yes when it was scary, when I didn't know how it was going to turn out. So, you know, when I wrote Black Flamingo, it was because I'd written some poems, a collection of poems, and then my agent and an editor said, could you turn this into a novel in verse? And I was like, don't even know what that is. So I had to look up novels in verse, and I actually had read some, but I didn't realize what they were called. And then I read some more, and then tried to do it and did it very successfully. It's become a really successful book. With the short film, it was trusting people to take my work and interpret it. So saying yes to something that I really wasn't going to be in a lot of control of, you know. With my poem, I'm Nobody's Nigger, it was just like putting it online, you know, just putting it online and and sharing it the day I'd written it, or the day after I'd written it, which was, you know, quite a daring thing to do, because I didn't know how it would be received. I didn't know what would happen when that poem was in the world. And even like just going up to Benjamin Zephaniah and saying, I'm a poet, will you check out my work? Like having that confidence. So, you know, he isn't the only person I've walked up to like that. And I've gone up to other poets, I won't name them, who have just kind of been really dismissive, and not been interested. And actually, you know, with that same CD that I had that I was going to give to Benjamin, like I'd also was trying to give one to someone else, and they said, I'm never going to listen to that. Save your CD.
That's so disappointing.
I know. Yeah. So, you know, but, you know, if I'd been disheartened and didn't give it to Benjamin, like my life could have gone in a much different direction. So I think actually just kind of like going into the unknown, you know, and I think that's what you do when you sit down to write as well. You just kind of go into the unknown and kind of figure it out on the page. And I think that's what I'm doing with life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just figuring it out.
It's just about having that courage, that audacious spirit. And, you know, like I said, if it had landed in the wrong hands, your CD, it landed in the right hands with Benjamin, you know, and the rest was written. So what does the next chapter look like for you creatively?
Well, more books. I'm writing a a book, like I said, a middle grade book, a fantasy story for 8 to 12-year-olds, and I think that could also make a really good animation. So kind of having conversations there. But yeah, like continuing to talk about adapting my work. Like I'd love to adapt Black Flamingo for stage and for screen. And also, I know this is a little while away, but 2029 will be 10 years since Black Flamingo came out. And so I want to make a big noise for the book in that year. So I'm really kind of gearing up for then as well, because like I said, so many people have been inspired by that book, and authors have published books directly inspired by that book. So I really want to kind of like own that and like kind of share that lineage, you know, like the people that have been inspired by me and the people I've been inspired by, and kind of put on something, a big event or a festival, like just to kind of really like celebrate. I want to have more parties. I want to have more parties. That is really what I want to be doing going forward, bringing people together, celebrating, you know, supporting one another, planning what we can do moving forward, and keep creativity alive and keep telling stories that matter.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, I like to do a thing called the full circle moment, and it's literally just a reflection exercise. So what would you say to a younger version of yourself about softness, especially in a world that doesn't always make space for it?
Okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, because my young Dean, he was very drawn to like toughness and masculine energy, but I think it was because, you know, not having dad in the house, but I think sometimes found it in the wrong people. And so I'd say, you know, just take a moment to celebrate your softness, your the gentleness of you, and the kind of the kindness that you have and the curiosity you have. And that's what people enjoy being around. Like they don't need you to be macho to love you and accept you. They just need you to be you. And I think you're most you when you're vulnerable and curious and open. So drop the armor and don't hide behind those macho guys, you know. And also, I hope this comes out right, but like really take a moment to appreciate the amazing women in your life. You're always looking out for the male role model, but like look at the incredible women that have raised you, that have supported you, that, you know, that have kind of just been by your side consistently throughout your life, you know, and who celebrate you, who are the loudest when celebrating you. You know, I'm thinking in this moment of my friend Brianna, who lives in Atlanta, but it's like she's always celebrating me. She's an amazing author as well, Brianna J. McDaniel. She's always celebrating me. She flew to London to come to the UK premiere of Two Black Boys in Paradise. Like when I was in Atlanta screening it, I stayed with her, and she's just one of many women who are like constantly supporting, championing, and like filling me like with kind of such with so much love, you know, and kind of affirmation, and it's just like, I think my younger self didn't see the value of that because he was too busy looking for men's approval, and he just was like, women were pouring love into him and he took it for granted. And I don't want to take that for granted, because women are taken for granted so much in this world. So I just want to tell him and any young man listening or watching, like, you know, yes, maybe you don't have the male role model you want in life, but like, I bet you've got some amazing women in your life, and that's just so special.
Beautiful. Dean, thank you so much for your time and coming down. I have laughed. I have just felt these beautiful emotions and softness throughout our conversation, and just marveled at your accomplishments so far. And there's going to be so much more to come. You know, you're only at like the middle of this, you know, so there's so much more ahead of you. If people want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
Dean Atta, DeanAtta, on all the socials, Instagram, even TikTok.
Thank you guys so much for joining us once more. And if you want to follow the Black Circle's journey, we are also on across all socials, the Black Circle Podcast. Thank you so much.